Mhm. Well, here we are with the Franklin's Tale. Now, I really like this one because this is a tale in the middle of a group of presumably Christians traveling on pilgrimage. Is a story about magic and a druid. Honestly, because quite a lot of this story um, happens in Brittany, Little Britain, Less Britain, and that sort of odd bit of France that kind of, certainly for a long time, um, people didn't necessarily speak French. They spoke Breton, which is similar to Cornish, is similar to Welsh. So there's a little bit. And people felt they had more in common with the Cornish and the Welsh than with the rest of France. And it's a very odd storytelling poetry tradition comes from Breton, and lots of magic. I think there are something like 3 different places, all of which claim to be Merlin's grave. Lots of associations with magic and King Arthur and all sorts of strange things. So, the Franklin begins by saying, "Please forgive my country accent, and please forgive that I am not an educated man. But if you are willing to listen, I will tell you my tale." That's great with the beginning, isn't it? It was a long time ago. Living in Brittany was a knight, a humble man, who fell in love with a lady above his station, and he was too nervous to woo her, being conscious as he was that he had little material wealth to offer her. But their love grew, and when he finally found enough courage to propose to her, she did accept, and the knight and his lady lived together very happily in wedded bliss. I like to think that the Franklin's kind of shooting a wry look at the wife of Bath at this point. Lived together very happily in wedded bliss for over a year, and the lady promised that she would always be faithful to her lord, to her knight, to her husband. But there came a time when the knight's wanderlust overtook him, and he decided to travel across the narrow sea to Britain. For there is much to learn in the island of Britain, the Isle of the Mighty, the Isle of the Brave. But of course he promised that he would return. But the lady, alone and bereft, wept bitter tears inconsolably for some time, and her friends spent time with her and played chess and took her for walks along the beach. And there, as she was gazing out across the sea, wondering when her husband would return, and looking at the ships and wondering which of those ships would bring her husband back to her aching heart. As she looked at the sharp rocks in the sea, I thought, but which of those rocks for my husband's ship flounder on. So, by the month of May, her friends took her to a beautiful garden where people were dancing, as of course people dance in the merry month of May. And there a young squire saw the lady, and his heart was lost, and he knew that he would find no peace until she became his lover. So he approached the lady, he approached the knight's wife, and she said, I have sworn to my husband to always be true and always be faithful. And then she said, I will be your lover if you can remove all the dangerous rocks from around the coast. And the young squire plunged into a deep melancholy, knowing that she had asked the impossible. And he was in such a melancholy state for so long that his brother became very worried. Now the squire's brother had knowledge of magic. For in those days there was still magic in the world. And the squire's brother had studied in Orleans. He had studied, and he had become a druid. And he remembered the books that spoke about the tides and the sun and the moon. And he convinced the young squire to travel to Orleans with him. And it was there that they met a druid who said, indeed, I have much magic. So the three men, the druid, the squire's brother, sat in the druid's house, and there before them appeared an image through the window of many fine stags with huge antlers. But they all fell to the arrows as they were hunted. And then it seemed to the young squire that he saw his lady dancing, and he saw falcons hunting herons. And then the whole scene disappeared, because of course it was nothing but illusion, simply a conjurer's trick. So the squire spoke to the druid, and they spoke about magic, and they spoke about the moon, and they spoke about the tides, and they spoke about floods. And the young squire agreed a large sum of money, 1,000 gold pieces. Seriously, 1,000 gold pieces to pay the druid to secure a flood which would rise above the level of all the sharp rocks and render it safe for ships to sail home. And so it was that the three men travelled from Orleans to Brittany, and the druid worked his magic, and the tide rose and covered all the sharp rocks. And the lady saw this, and was beside herself, for she had an oath to keep to two men, but the keeping of each oath would mean breaking the other. So when the squire approached his lady, she simply didn't know what to do. So for 3 days she thought that the only honourable thing to do was to take her own life. It's all right, she doesn't. This is a happy story. Bear with me. Okay, it has a really happy ending. You know. So it was at this point, where the druid had rendered the sea safe to sail on, that the knight appeared home, as he sailed to Brittany and was reunited with his wife. And it was then that his wife told her husband all that had happened, what she had promised to the young squire. And the husband said, "But you should keep your word, for you have made a solemn oath. Tomorrow go to the garden where you danced with the squire and where you said that you would consummate your love for him." So the lady left her home to walk to the garden. But on the way, in a busy, bustling marketplace, she met the young squire, and she told him all that had happened, and what her husband had bid her to do. And the young squire, I'm finding it a bit difficult to picture the look on his face at this point. The young squire said, "Your husband has returned. You must stay faithful to him." So they never met in the garden, and the lady returned to her knight. And the young squire went to the druid and told him that his lady's husband had returned home, possibly because by the druid's magic he had rendered the sea safe to sail on. But what was the young man to do about paying the druid £1,000? He was facing a life of poverty. But the druid said, "I will take no money from you, for everyone has acted with honour," as indeed had the druid. And so the knight and his lady lived in happy wedded bliss. The squire accepted his fate, and all ended well. It's an odd story, I think, and it kind of stands out as being a bit different from the rest of the tales. But there you are. Everyone acts with honour. Perhaps that's in the tradition of chivalry. An odd story, and I really wasn't expecting a druid to turn up in the middle of the Canterbury Tales, but there you are. They turn up all over the place, don't they? There we are. More Canterbury Tales to come. So do watch some of the other stories. And please do subscribe. And have fun in a garden during the merry month of May. See you again soon.